ثانية غفر الله لكم. ثالثة على حب المولى أبي عبد الله الحسين بأعلى أصواتكم تؤجرون.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. In the name of God, most merciful, ever merciful, and may God's peace and blessings be upon His holy Prophet Muhammad and the purified members of his household and progeny.
اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد.
السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليكم مني جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. Brothers, sisters, Assalamu alaikum jami'an wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Tonight we will inshallah continue with the same topic that we began in the previous night, and which had to do with the importance of the source of knowledge in religious education, and the corollary of that, which is the disastrous consequences that can be the outcome of not having the right sources of knowledge and information in religion. And to put the same question in a more practical sense for us, in a more relevant sense for us, if we look at that society which attributed itself as followers of that man, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wa alihi, how could we say that that kind of society, while it says that we adhere to the teachings of this man and we are followers of his religion and the revolution that he caused in their societies, and at the same time we see that 50 years after his death, that same society turns against his own grandson and murders him in that tragic and graphic manner that we all know and we call the tragedy of Karbala, when in fact he was not simply just a regular man, but a man that had been referred to by the Holy Prophet as a special grandson, where the Holy Prophet says that he is from me and I am from him, and he is one of the two masters of the youth of the paradise, and that he is an imam whether he rises or whether he remains in peace. How do we put all of this together? The true answer to this obviously requires to study the equation and to study that situation from various angles. The angle that we are concentrating on right now is the one that we already started. So we're going to continue with that one. The angle of the importance of the status and the situation of knowledge in that society. In order to properly understand the situation that Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam was in, the context of his situation and the context of his society, we need to begin from the beginning and try to understand the role of knowledge and religion in the Arabian Peninsula before Imam al-Hussein. In fact, we need to go to the time where Islam had not even begun in the Arabian Peninsula. If we go back to the books of history, the historians tell us that in the Arabian Peninsula there were probably between 11 and 17 people in the entire Arabian Peninsula who could read and write. That gives us an idea of the level of literacy that existed in the Arabian Peninsula, or to say it more accurately, the lack thereof. This was a society that was considered an oral tradition. They relied a lot more on their memory, but as a result of their lack of education and their lack of knowledge and their lack of being able to access scholarly works, it was a society that was steeped in superstition and mythology and legend. And then we have the advent of Islam, which right from the beginning emphasized the role of knowledge. In fact, it would be impossible to exaggerate the role that Islam wants knowledge to play in society. if we look at the first revelations that are supposed to be a good indication of the new religion that is going to be established, the commentators tell us that the first two chapters of the Quran that were revealed were Surah Al-Alaq and Surah Al-Qalam. Right from the beginning, we see that the first verse of the first chapter to be revealed says, read. And the second chapter of the second verse of the second chapter to be revealed, Surah Al-Qalam, has the word Al-Qalam, Noon wal-Qalam, in a clear reference to reading and writing. This new religion that is being announced to the world starts the two first chapters to the world with read and write. This was a revolution for that time and for that kind of oral society. If we look at the written word is considered one of the great accomplishments, if not the greatest accomplishment of human society and human civilization. The written word is what allowed human societies to evolve. It captures the history, it allows you to transmit your knowledge, and it gives you a snapshot in time of what is going on in terms of knowledge and education in a certain society, in a certain culture at a given point in time. So it can be taken by another society and built upon. And today in the fields of knowledge society and information society, when they look at any society and they want to see how it progresses and how it evolves, they look at the rate at which a society has access to knowledge, consumes the knowledge and digests it, and then produces its own formats of knowledge. And this happens in any human society. The only difference is the rate at which this happens. So while in some societies this happens and you see a society able to generate new formats and new types of knowledge over maybe 50 years or 100 years, as we see today in certain societies, others are able to actually duplicate their amount of knowledge or to create new formats of knowledge in 1 to 3 years right now. This is the difference between one society and another. And then if we come to ourselves, we are supposed to be the followers of this religion that presents itself to the world as a religion built on the idea of knowledge and built on the idea of reading and writing. And in fact, in addition to just being Muslims, we pride ourselves on being followers of Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam. And as followers to their teachings, this is an increase, this is an additional reason for us to be educated ourselves, to be fully aware, to be fully knowledgeable about anything that is relevant to our affairs. This is for practical purposes as well as religious purposes. We may say it's because Ahlul Bayt have ordered us to, and so we may do it, but for practical reasons. We are living in a minority situation. It's only normal that when you're in a minority situation, you're going against the grain, there's a tremendous current going on against you, that it's only a matter of time before your belief system, before your values and your worldview and your identity are going to be eroded. And you're going to be fully assimilated by whatever context and whatever current is going on against you. Unless you have actually equipped yourself with the tools and with the knowledge and with what you need so that you understand where you stand, first of all for yourself and next for the next generations. Because otherwise right now, everybody is exposed to the same issues. And one person may lose their identity in 2 months or 5 months, another will lose it over a full generation. But everybody will lose it unless there's work being done so that you're equipping yourself and you're actually able to handle the adverse current, the opposite current coming on against you. When we look at ourselves, we need to ask ourselves, let's say about reading. We spoke about reading. How many books have we read? How many books have we read about Islamic teachings? How many books have we read about the history, the biography of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam in our entire lives? Today there's not even an excuse to say we don't have time to read. The books are being converted to audiobooks that you can listen to. If you look at the works that we have in English, there's a tremendous amount of information that is easily accessible, and a lot of it is just free, waiting to be read by very big scholars. We have the works of Sayyid al-Jalali, we have the works of Sayyid al-Mudarrisi, we have the works of Sheikh Shamsuddin, we have the life of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam by Sheikh Baqir Sharif al-Qurashi. In 3 volumes he talks about the life of Imam al-Hussein as part of an encyclopedia, entirely translated in English right now, of 43 volumes about Ahl al-Bayt alayhim salam. And recently, a couple of days ago, I saw a new book come out. I haven't seen it, haven't read it yet. I saw the advertisement for it where the work is called In the Words of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, From Medina to Mecca, in which they narrate many of the sermons and the sayings of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam related to the tragedy of Karbala. And if you go into the Arabic side and you actually have access to Arabic, then the information grows exponentially. You have books like Mawsu'at Kalimat al-Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, an amazing work that contains 970 of the sayings and sermons of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, in addition to his biography. We have a 6-volume work called Ma'al Rakb al-Husseini that describes the journey of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam entirely and after Karbala. We have another work by Ray Shahri in 9 volumes describing and analyzing the life of Imam al-Hussein and his position in Islam. We have a work by Sayyid Ja'far Murtada al-Amili, an encyclopedia of 24 volumes about Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. So the excuse cannot be that there's no information, or that we don't have time, or that we don't have access. The information is there, and we live in a world where it is very easily accessible. In fact, it's free. And we're in a context where this is a must. It's not a nice to have, it's a must, it's a necessity. In any case, let's go back to the topic. What Islam was trying to do with the Arabic society, with the Arab society, was that to transform it, to revolutionize it from a oral culture to a civilized and literate society. And this is exactly what the Holy Prophet did. And right from the beginning, we see that the Holy Prophet ensured that everything that was taking place historically in his society was going to be documented, so that it's documented accurately and shared accurately. And we don't have time to go through the narrations and the traditions about this. And we all know about the tradition in which, after the Battle of Badr, when there were prisoners, people who had fought against the Prophet for 10 and more years, and that all they wanted to do was to kill the Muslims and to kill the Holy Prophet. The Muslims were very happy to capture them and to have them as prisoners, and they couldn't wait to kill them. The Holy Prophet said, no one is killing anyone. These people can read and write. If they want to be freed, all they need to do was to teach Muslims how to read and write, and they could be freed. That's the ransom for their freedom. This is to highlight the importance of reading and writing in the society that the Holy Prophet wanted to create. So the Holy Prophet became surrounded with a number of people, scribes, who are now not only documenting and writing down everything that was happening in the life of the Holy Prophet. Of course, they were starting with the revelations. As soon as the Quran would be revealed, there would be scribes who would sit and write down. But in addition to the Quran, to the holy verses of the Quran that were revealed, it was also the sayings and the actions and the decisions and the traits of the Holy Prophet that were being documented. And the Prophet encouraged that continuously. He did not want this to stop. And we have many sayings that tell us who most or many of these people were. The first amongst them was Imam Ali alayhi salam, well known to be one of the scribes of the Holy Prophet. He wrote down everything he could for himself and to pass it down to others. And we have many others. We have Zayd, we have Abdullah bin Mas'ud, and so on and so forth. Many scribes. While the Holy Prophet was trying to create that society, and we see that many of the people were actually convinced that everything does need to be documented accurately as the Holy Prophet wanted. The problem is that this is not what ended up happening. And there's many reasons for this. If we look at the life of the Holy Prophet himself, there were already many indications, and we'll mention some of them a little bit later. Many indications that not everybody was convinced, and not everybody really wanted to see everything documented. And perhaps one of the very well famous and well-known indications of things to come later is that incident that Ibn Abbas has referred to as the calamity of the Thursday, when the Holy Prophet, as he was dying, asked for something to write his last will upon. In the narrations we have, he asked for a shoulder blade, the bone of a shoulder, to write down his last will, a few words to be his last will. He didn't want to say it, he wanted to write it down. It's very important. And we are told that Umar opposed this incident, this request of the Holy Prophet, his dying wish to write his will, and then that created a huge commotion beside the Holy Prophet. And so the Holy Prophet asked everybody to leave the room except Imam Ali alayhi salam, saying, there cannot be this kind of disagreement in the presence of a Prophet. Leave. And Ibn Abbas, when he left, he was seen crying. And he said, this is one of the greatest calamities. This is a calamity of the Thursday, in which the Holy Prophet asked to write his last will down, and he was prevented, and it was said about him that he was either hallucinating or the illness had overtaken him. This was an indication of things to come. So what happens? The Holy Prophet passes away, and the first person to take over the Khilafah was Abu Bakr. One of the first decisions from Abu Bakr politically is that he decided that from now on, it was going to become prohibited on any Muslim to write anything down. And to be explicit, it's not just writing anything down, it's not repeating or saying any of the sayings of the Holy Prophet from now on. And I'm going to read a narration about this. So this started from the time of Abu Bakr. No longer is it allowed for anyone to write anything down, and no longer is it allowed for anyone to speak any words and attribute them to the Holy Prophet. The only thing that people could talk about openly and to repeat openly about religion were related to the Quran. So we have a narration from Abu Bakr in which he says, he gathered the people and he told them right from the beginning, you narrate on behalf of the Prophet reports about which you may differ. And those who are going to come after you are going to differ even more about them. So if anyone asks you anything, go back to the book of Allah and find what is halal in it, and whatever is halal in it is halal for you, and whatever is haram in it is haram for you. So this is what we found happened in the time of the first Khalifa, Abu Bakr. And then we move to the second Khalifa. Before I go into the details here, there was one exception. Allow me to mention the exception and we continue. Obviously, the people still needed some sort of religious voice. At that time, the religious voice was not formalized yet. It would be formalized in the time of the second Khalifa, but it began in the time of the first Khalifa. The formal voice is the voice that the government allows to speak on behalf of religion, on behalf of the Holy Prophet. So while the general masses, the companions of the Holy Prophet, were now prohibited from repeating any of the words of the Prophet, there was an exception. And at that time, during the time of the first Khalifa, the only official exception was the daughter of the first Khalifa, Aisha. So if the Muslim disagreed and they needed something from the Holy Prophet to reach a certain religious decision and they couldn't agree on it, and they needed an official voice from the Holy Prophet, they would go to the wife, the widow of the Holy Prophet, Aisha, and she would be the only official voice of religion at that time. Now we move to the time of the second Khalifa. What we noticed in the time of Umar is that he continued with the same trend. He kept that policy, and in fact he reinforced it and formalized it. Were there any differences? There were a few differences. The situation got a lot worse. If people were now going to speak on behalf of the Prophet and repeat any of the narrations, they would be punished, they would be tortured, and they would be put under house arrest. But they also expanded a little bit so that it was no longer only Aisha who was speaking on behalf of religion. One more person was officially introduced as the speaker on behalf of the Prophet, and it was Abu Hurairah. And there's no time to go into any discussion here. In addition to this, so what we're noticing is that there's a prohibition on writing the ahadith. There's a prohibition on any religious writing of any sort. And we also get a little bit of explanation. We have narrations from Umar in which he says clearly, he explains what his rationale is. He gives two reasons, and we are going to give two reasons. The two reasons he gives for this is that he says the problem of the previous nations are that they mixed up the writings of the sayings of their scholars with the sayings of their scriptures. And we don't want people to start mixing up between the sayings of the Prophet and the Holy Quran. So that's the first reason. The second reason, very similar but a little different. He says we don't want people to consider the words of the Holy Prophet more important than the verses of the Quran. And I don't think I need to spend any time answering either one of these arguments. But these were the two arguments that were presented for not writing any of the knowledge of that time. The true reasons is that these people now, the first reason, let's call it political, is that these people were rulers. They needed to make decisions. They needed to say we're going to do this and we're not going to do that. As a ruler, if I say I'm going to do this, I'm going to do something, or I ask you and order you to do something, and if every time I say this is my command, this is my order, every time I say something, one of the companions stands up and says, actually the Holy Prophet taught us something a little bit different. This is what the Prophet taught us. This is how the Prophet used to do it. Because everything was documented and well known. Which means that it becomes impossible for me to rule if every time I am going to make a decision is going to contradict something that the Holy Prophet did. So let's close that door and say it's prohibited on anyone to repeat anything that the Prophet said, one, and two, to write it down. The second reason is theological. It's a matter of belief. The truth is that if you go back into the history of the Holy Prophet and the people surrounding him from Quraysh, it was very evident right from the beginning that the members of Quraysh never believed in the infallibility of the Holy Prophet. They accepted his infallibility in that the words that he was repeating in the revelation and the Quran were infallible, but nothing more. And we have a narration from Abdullah ibn Umar ibn al-As in which he clearly states this. This is mentioned in the Sunan and in other books. We are told that he says, I used to follow the Prophet around and I was to write everything that he says. And then I would also encounter the members of Quraysh. And at some point I told them, this is what I'm doing. I'm writing everything down so that I memorize it. And the members of Quraysh objected to what I was doing and they prohibited me from continuing to write. And they said, Muhammad is nothing but a regular man like us. He gets angry and he gets sad and he gets happy. Are you going to write everything he says when he is in anger and everything he says when he is in sadness and when he's happy? Obviously these states are going to impact what he's saying. So there's no need to write down and memorize everything that he says. And he says, I actually stopped writing. For a while, Abdullah ibn Umar ibn al-As, one of the scribes of the Prophet, says, I completely stopped writing. He was convinced by this argument. And he says, I encountered the Prophet a while later and I told him, this is what Quraysh have said about me and about you. And in the very famous narration that's considered authentic, they say the Holy Prophet told me, he says, the Holy Prophet told me, son of Amr, continue to write. I swear by the one who has sent me that anything that comes out of this, and he pointed to his mouth, anything that comes out of this is nothing but the truth. And so we know that the Holy Prophet was not only in disagreement about the fact of fallibility and infallibility, he was still ordering him to continue to write. The Holy Prophet wanted people to continue to write. except that there were other reasons why people no longer wanted to continue to write. At this point in the Khilafah of the second Khalifa, two things happened. Two new sources of information came into the picture. And we need to spend a couple of minutes talking about each of them. The first source of information were the Jews and the Christians, and the second source of information were the storytellers. We have to go back a little bit in the history, the pre-Islamic history of the Arabs. The Arabs held the Jews and the Christians in a very high esteem. They respected them very much before the advent of Islam, and they continued to do so even after Islam. Why? Because the Arabs, the majority of them could not read and write, and they did not have any holy books. They considered themselves as having no real tradition. The Jews and the Christians who were living amongst them, they spoke more languages because of their scriptures. They could read and write in a lot of cases, and they were considered to have a wisdom that has been passed down to them from generation to generation. So the Arabs would actually consult them for all of their difficult and big dilemmas and problems in life. That was the situation of the Jews and the Christians in Arabia. When Islam came, the Holy Prophet started telling his followers, do not go to the Jews and the Christians when you have questions. You come to me and you learn them from Islam. Why? One reason, let's call it a little bit more political. When the Holy Prophet moved to the city of Medina, he started creating peace treaties with every single tribe and village around the city of Medina. And that included the big Jewish tribes that existed at that time. They were wealthy and powerful, but they were secluded in their own world. So the Prophet established peace treaties with them. And they signed their oaths and they committed that they were going to be peaceful and have an alliance of peace with the Holy Prophet. And at the same time, they right away went to the mushrikeen, to the polytheists of Mecca, who were trying to assassinate the Prophet one way or another, and who were at war with him. And they allied with them, and they helped them in the wars against the Prophet, while they had just signed the peace treaties with the Prophet. So here we see the Quran change tones about the Jews who were living in the time of the Prophet. It says they are lying and they are betraying, and they cannot be trusted. So let's say there's a political reason why the Holy Prophet said, stay away from the Jews and the Christians, especially the Jews. Let's put that aside. There's a second reason, and this one is the main one. The Holy Prophet is sent with a new religion to educate society with a new set of values from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The purpose of his mission is that everybody embraces these new teachings. Everybody is supposed to accept this new set of knowledge and education. How can you, at the same time as doing this, go back to what Islam is telling you has been distorted, filled with fabrications and distortions over time? So the Holy Prophet is now telling them, if you have questions, if you have concerns, do not go to the Jews and the Christians like you used to before. Come to me, come to the Islamic teachings. That's one. That's one group, one source of information to keep in mind. The second one is the storytellers. Today, when one of us wants to be entertained, we may go to the movie theaters, we may watch TV, and in the majority of cases we know a lot of it is just fiction. The Arabs at that time, one of their main sources of entertainment were people referred to as al-qasasin, people who were storytellers. What was the issue with storytellers? Is that their main purpose is to entertain. They're not really concerned about truth and about facts and about history. They want to entertain. But this caused problems in that society because sometimes a lot of their teachings were going to be mixed up with things that were supposed to be historical truths. And they have no problems in distorting and fabricating all sorts of elements to make stories more entertaining, as we have today. When, let's say, Hollywood decides to create a movie that is called a biography or a historical movie, usually the main purpose of the movie is not necessarily the biographical or the historical accuracy. It's more for entertainment purposes. It's not an academic work, it's an entertainment work. So you cannot really rely on all the details. Well, it was a lot worse in the case of the storytellers. So the Holy Prophet in his time, when his society began, these people are trying to come back and continue to play their entertainment role. The Prophet prevented them from it. He would not allow the storytellers to come into the public gatherings and tell their stories. You'd have to go seek them out if you wanted to, but the Prophet is not going to give them a platform. So what happened in the time of Umar and the second Khalifa, what happened is that suddenly, now combine, I want you to combine the layers. There's a prohibition on writing any of the ahadith of the Holy Prophet. There's a prohibition on repeating any of the ahadith of the Holy Prophet. And now we're saying the new sources of information is that we're going to give a platform to the Jews and the Christians that had been prevented from saying their teachings, and to the storytellers that had been prevented from telling their stories by the Prophet. They were now given a platform. History tells us that in the Khilafah of the second Khalifa, they were actually given dedicated days to come into the mosque of the Holy Prophet in the city of Medina, to sit on the pulpit of the Holy Prophet on specific days of the week. The scholars of the Jews and the Christians and the storytellers, they were all given days of the week, and they would come and they would repeat whatever they wanted to repeat. This was going to become the status and the state of knowledge in that society. So then we move on to the next Khalifa. What happened in the time of Uthman? When Uthman came, he continued with the same policies. The only difference with Uthman is that he was a little bit more interested in himself and in his family members, Bani Umayyah. So the people that he wanted to give privileges to, favors to, were no longer the same people that Abu Bakr and Umar wanted to privilege. He didn't really care that it was Aisha or not who was going to be the official voice. So he decided to bring a lot other people from his own family closer to him, from Bani Umayyah, and he decided that Aisha was going to fall back to the position of the other widows of the Prophet, being a normal woman like the other woman. So he removed all of her privileges, her social privileges. She was no longer going to be consulted on religious matters, and he reduced the offerings of the government for the widows of the Prophet. He reduced hers back to the same amount as the other widows were receiving. And of course, Aisha did not like this, so she insulted him and cursed him and told her followers to go kill Uthman because he had become a kafir because of this. This is what happened during that time, during the Khilafah of the third Khalifa. In the meantime, Uthman was more interested, as we said, with his personal wealth and what he was going to give to the members of his family, appointing them in all sorts of sensitive positions in his government, even though they were extremely incompetent and unqualified and corrupt people, until at the end of it, the people uprose against Uthman and killed him because of it. During that time, the person who was seizing that entire opportunity of chaos was a governor who had been appointed by Umar, who was seizing all of this, and the carte blanche, as they say, that had been given to him because he was from Bani Umayyah, was Muawiyah, who was working a little bit outside of all of this, because he's not in the Hijaz, he's sitting in the Levant, he's sitting in Syria. So he was working to consolidate his power with the main goal, with the main purpose of recreating the old legacy of Bani Umayyah, of making sure that Bani Umayyah are going to return to the mastership of Quraysh and the mastership of the Arabs. And he was going to use any and every possibility and every tool and mechanism he has for that. And the main tool that he realized could be used for that was nothing but religion. And Muawiyah was an expert at bribing and paying off people that are considered scholars to fabricate and to create the narrations and the interpretations of the Quran that he needs in order to supplement and to support his political agenda, which we just described. And his propaganda machine was actually very, very successful, to the point where as soon as he took over power at that time, he started distorting the image of the Holy Prophet. And so if we go back to the shameful, indecent things that we find about our Holy Prophet, they all come from this time. Because they wanted to lower the status of the Holy Prophet to someone who is just a regular man. So if this was the Prophet, then don't come and expecting any Khalifa or any ruler to be any better. Of course the Prophet is going to do shameful things. Of course the Prophet is going to do indecent things. No problem with that. He's just a regular man. And then he turned his attention to his biggest enemy at that time, Imam Ali alayhi salam. And he worked on distorting the image of the Imam to the point where we are told when the Imam was killed, when the Imam was struck on his head with the poisoned sword while praying in the mosque Salat al-Fajr, when that news reached the Sham, people were wondering what was Ali doing in the niche, in the mihrab in any case. Because they had been convinced that Ali, this ruler who's sitting in the other side of the Islamic world, does not even pray. He has nothing to do with being in a mihrab. So how did he get into a mihrab in the first place to be struck on the head? This was the level of distortion of the knowledge of that society. Then he turned to the next after Imam Ali alayhi salam passed away, and he distorted the image of Imam al-Hasan alayhi salam. And the distortions about Imam al-Hasan exist until today. He said about Imam al-Hasan alayhi salam that he is not fit for rulership. Imam al-Hasan alayhi salam is not interested in anything that may lead to battle or war or blood. He's a very peaceful man who's interested in the refined luxuries of this world. He's interested in women. He spends his time marrying and divorcing women. This is Imam al-Hasan alayhi salam. The Imam al-Hasan that Muawiyah and his group created. And unfortunately the one that is repeated on the channels until today. And in the books of history until today. So it worked. The propaganda worked. And then if we move to Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, we can imagine what kind of distortions existed in the knowledge of that society. Where we are told that by the time Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam had been killed, and Yazid decided that he wanted to humiliate further Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam and his family and his companions. So what did he do? He took the woman and the children of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, which was absolutely unnecessary. But it's because he wanted to humiliate them further. So they were taken as captives, tied down with ropes and chains, all the way from Karbala back to Damascus, to be paraded from one town to another. And this is exactly what happened. The difference, however, the miscalculation, the mistake of Yazid, was that his intention, because of his vanity and his pride, was to think that he could just bring them and parade them and the thing would end there. He never thought that if he gave the tiniest opportunity for the members of Ahlul Bayt to actually interact with people, that the people may realize what's going on. And that's why we see first when Ahlul Bayt alayhim as-salam, who were held captives, when they started to reach the outskirts of Sham, of the Levant, they noticed that people had decorated the streets and they were wearing clothes as though there was a huge celebration going on. And this is why we have the sayings where they wonder, but they're not really wondering because they know what's going on. They say to the people of the Levant, the people of the Sham, do they have a Eid, a celebration of which we are not aware? What were they celebrating? They were celebrating the killing of the grandson of the Holy Prophet. So when they continued to come into the towns, and when Sayyidah Zainab alayhi salam was given a platform to speak, or when Imam Sajjad alayhi salam was allowed to speak, all it took were a few words from them, and the people started realizing who these people were. And all of the distortions and all of the fabrications no longer made a lot of sense. These people are truly the family of this man that introduced us to the religion that we have adopted. They truly are his family members. And this man who was killed was truly the grandson of the Holy Prophet. And these people are truly the representatives of religion. And these became the first blows, the first threats to the empire of Yazid. And this is not the time to go into the details, but history tells us that if you fast forward less than a century later, the entire dynasty of the Umayyad crumbled when you look at the series of events that transpired afterwards, resulting from the miscalculation of Yazid because of this. Allow me to end with one line from a ziyarah of Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam to Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. The line is actually repeated in two different ziyarat with a very minor change between the words. in the ziyarah of Al-Eidain, Ziyarat al-Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam fil Eidain. So the ziyarah of the Imam in the two Eids, and the ziyarah of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam called Ziyarat al-Arba'in. There's a line that I hope when you hear it, you will summarize the entire discussion that we had, and inshallah we'll continue it tomorrow. The entire discussion that we had about the role of knowledge and what Imam al-Hussein's purpose was in his movement. Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam in the ziyarah, where he talks to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala about his grandfather, Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, at first he says, فَأَعْذَرَ فِي الدُّعَاء, meaning that he called to you so much that he left no excuses. وَمَنَحَ النُّصْحِ, and he gave good counsel and good advice to people. وَبَذَلَ مُهْجَتَهُ فِيكِ, and so he sacrificed his soul for your sake. And the next line, the purpose of all of this, the next line, why did he sacrifice his soul for your sake? لِيَسْتَنْقِذَ عِبَادَكَ مِنَ الْجَهَالَةِ, so that he may rescue your servants from ignorance. وَحِيرَةِ الضَّلَالَةِ, and the loss of misguidance. And of course, when our scholars come to this word, بَذَلَ مُهْجَتَهُ فِيكِ, they say Muhjat al-Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam was not just his soul. Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam did not just sacrifice himself in order to rescue people from ignorance. He sacrificed people like Al-Abbas alayhi salam. He sacrificed people like Ali al-Akbar. He sacrificed people like Al-Qasim. He sacrificed the dignity and integrity of people like Zainab alayhi salam. All of that so that he may rescue your servants from ignorance. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us assess the knowledge that we are encountering in our lives, so that we may recognize knowledge when it is knowledge, and we may recognize ignorance when it is ignorance. And that we may be able not only to learn it ourselves, but to pass it on to others accurately. Assalamu ala al-Hussein, wa ala Ali ibn al-Hussein, wa ala awlad al-Hussein, wa ala ashab al-Hussein, wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi al-tayyibin al-tahirin.